Coming up, Pascal Siakam drops 52, snaps the Knicks' winning streak, while the Bulls win it at the buzzer. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NBA, local experts taking you through the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. We have our Locked On hosts here. They're ready to recap all the action for you from yesterday. We're going to start out with the Bucks and the Cavs. Giannis dropped 45 last night in Cleveland, but some clutch plays from Donovan Mitchell allowed the Cavs to get their first win of the year against Milwaukee. Locked On Bucks and Locked On Cavs are in to go over everything that you need to know.
The Bucks battled hard, but they left their run just a little bit late in Cleveland. My name's Kane Pittman. I'm the host of the Locked On Bucks podcast. Giannis was relentless in this game. He had 45 points and 14 rebounds going up against Mobley, going up against Jared Allen. But ultimately, a first half the Bucks will live to regret. They were really dominated, down 18 at halftime. 17 turnovers in the first half, just not good enough. They are in the bottom half of the league for turnover percentage. Yes, they're coming up against the number one ranked defense prior to tonight in the Cleveland Cavaliers, but just sloppy stuff, and it dug them a hole that they weren't able to get out of. And this is part of the reason why they are a bottom half offense so far this year in the NBA. They're also 22-9, so not too much panic. You can catch us on Locked On Bucks, wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube.
Detroit dropped the second half of a back-to-back, losing in Philadelphia yesterday. Locked On Pistons has nothing nice to say after that lopsided loss.
This seriously might have been the worst watch of the entire season. Host of the Locked On Pistons podcast, Kukil here. The Pistons play on the second end of their back-to-back. This one was against Philadelphia 76ers in Philly. And the Pistons actually kept this game around a 10-point deficit throughout the game. I don't know how. It felt like it was a 30-point blowout the entire game. They ended up losing by 23. There's not a single positive to take from this game. This is a horrific game on all fronts from the Pistons. They can get somewhat of a pass for me for the little second of a back-to-back, I guess. But the offense tonight was one of the more horrific offenses I've watched this year. At one point in the second quarter, they had more turnovers than field goals made. They shot, 26% from deep. They shot 39% as a team from the field. Just horrific basketball tonight from the Detroit Pistons. There's nothing else to say. This was just a horrific game, possibly the worst game of the year.
The Celtics' extremely slow start came back to bite them as the Pacers held on by the skin of their teeth to get a big statement win in Boston. Locked On Pacers talks over the victory, while Locked On Celtics touches on the bright spots in the loss.
Pacers pick up their best win of the season in Boston. Tony East here from the Locked On Pacers podcast, here to tell you about the all-star level game that Tyrese Haliburton just played. 33 points from the Pacers' best player in this game. He took 24 shots, hit 12 of them, hit 6 threes, and helped the Pacers go on a huge first quarter run, 26-2 run for the Pacers against the defending Eastern Conference champs. And Haliburton was the catalyst behind it all. 15 points and 5 assists for him in the first quarter on his way to that 33-8 game. Guided the Pacers' offense the whole way, was a +1 and a huge win. So the Pacers, who are almost up 30 points at halftime, coast in the second half, quite frankly look awful, but built up a big enough lead to win in Boston over the 22-win Celtics. Huge win for the Pacers. They're back to 500. They're rolling. A bunch of players stepped up. We'll talk about them all and the game on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
Tale of two halves for the Boston Celtics. Down by as many as 30. They come back and almost pull this off. Not quite good enough, though. I'm John Corrales of the Locked On Celtics podcast. Celtics lost the first half by 28. They won the second half by 23. So a big halftime turnaround fueled by Jason Tatum, who, after he got smacked in the face and got a no call, just played angry the rest of the way and finished with 41 points. He almost carried the Celtics all the way back by himself. It was a level of aggression that is what the Celtics need to get back on the winning track. They played so passively in the first half. They didn't hit the paint. They didn't work the ball around. They didn't get the open shots. In the first half, they shot 20% from three. In the second half, they shot 38% because they were more aggressive. They were attacking. They were touching the paint and kicking it out. They were getting free throws. They were feeling better about themselves. The second half Celtics, that's a good team. The second half Celtics had an MVP candidate on their team. The first half Celtics did not. They played passively. They settled for shots. and that's the difference in the Celtics season. The first half, Celtics are the team on a 3-game losing streak. They've now lost 5 of their last 6 games. This team in the second half that we saw was the team that is contending. So what will the Celtics do? What will their decision be? Joe Mazzulla said after the game, they have a decision to make. What will it be? We'll see Friday night against Minnesota.
The Hawks and Bulls seem to be trading off buzzer beaters as of late. Chicago coming out on top in their latest matchup. The Locked On Hawks host catches us up with everything postgame.
Hello, friends. My name is Brad Rowland. The Atlanta Hawks go down in heartbreaking fashion on this Wednesday evening, falling at the buzzer to the Chicago Bulls. Just 10 days after the Hawks beat the Bulls at the buzzer in the same building at State Farm Arena, the Hawks were unable to hold serve in this one, leading late after being down as many as 18 points in the first half. The Hawks had a rebound in their clutches down the stretch. John Collins had the ball, probably should have gathered it down the stretch, and then it bounced to Ayo Dosunmu, who laid it in at the buzzer. The Hawks just didn't have enough offense in this game. Trae Young was very, very good for Atlanta, and there was some nice flashes in the second half from AJ Griffin and Bogdanovic, but generally speaking, the Hawks did not have quite enough firepower, and down the stretch, the Bulls made every mid-range jump shot, 6 consecutive pull-up mid-rangers from 16 to 20 feet, and that was the difference in the game. We'll have a full breakdown on the podcast, as always. Check out the Locked On Hawks podcast right now.
After getting tossed during Monday's game in Minnesota, Luka Doncic and head coach Jason Kidd returned, and they led Dallas to a 5-point win over the Timberwolves. Locked On Wolves has more on a tough one for Minnesota.
Rudy Gobert returned for the Timberwolves on Wednesday against the Mavericks, but it was not enough as Dallas beat the Wolves with a big fourth quarter. I'm Ben Beacon, host of the Locked On Wolves podcast, and the Timberwolves were right in this game up until midway through the fourth quarter. Dallas made 5 consecutive three-pointers, went on a 15-4 run, and basically pulled away. The Wolves were offensively challenged throughout. Anthony Edwards led the team in scoring, but wasn't very efficient. Austin Rivers was really the only other consistent offensive player for the Wolves as he continued his hot shooting from outside the arc. Rudy Gobert had a big first half, a double-double first half in this game, but was quiet down the stretch, and the Wolves were so focused on Luka Doncic that Spencer Dinwiddie and Tim Hardaway Jr. had a heyday from outside the arc late in this game as the Mavs pulled away, ending the Timberwolves' 3-game winning streak. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Wolves for all things Timberwolves. We'll talk more about this game on the post-game podcast.
Coming up, the Dubs struggle without their star power. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by Built Bar. They are the best tasting protein bars on the market. They are high in protein, made with 100% real chocolate, but they're low in sugar, low in fat, and low in carbs. They come in dozens of different flavors, including coconut brownie topper and coconut brownie bar. So you want to head over and try one of those new flavors as soon as you can. If you can get 15% off of your order if you use the promo code LOCKEDON15. So when you head over to built.com, just put in that promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your order. Welcome back. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NBA. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. An abysmal end to the road trip for the Warriors. They got blown out by the Nets last night. Locked On Warriors is looking on the plus side with that banged up defending champs roster.
The Golden State Warriors finished their 6-game road trip 1-5. They lost to the Brooklyn Nets tonight by 30 points. Yet despite that, there are positives. I'm Cyrus Sotzes with your Locked On Warriors, Locked On Now recap of the Golden State Warriors losing to the Brooklyn Nets tonight in Brooklyn, 143-113. But there were positives. Unlike last night's game against the Knicks, James Wiseman seeing significant minutes for a very rare occurrence this season. In 28 minutes of play, he scored a career-high 30 points, shooting 12 of 14 from the field, and that's not all, folks. The team's first-round pick in this most recent draft, Patrick Baldwin Jr., in 23 minutes of play, scored 17 points and went 5 for 8 from beyond the arc. And Moses Moody also had a solid game, 17 points on 3-5 shooting from beyond the arc. The Warriors are now home for 22 days with an 8-game homestand.
The league-leading 8-game win streak for New York came to an end at the hands of Pascal Siakam. He had an insane 52 points for Toronto. Locked On Knicks goes over the end of the streak. Locked On Raptors talks about Siakam's career night.
New York Knicks 8-game winning streak is kaput as they fall 113-106 to the Toronto Raptors. behind a career-high 52 points from Pascal Siakam. The Knicks didn't go out with a whimper, but with a bang. Julius Randle and RJ Barrett, each with 30 points. Randle was spectacular in this one, 13 of 17 from the floor, and was just deadly in the mid-range in particular. But combine that with some cutting off the ball and some physicality inside, and because of that can be forgiven for a late air ball he had on a wide open layup. RJ Barrett, he's basically fixed everything that plagued him early this season, consistently making the extra pass, finishing at the rim with incredible athletic ability, softer touch, more patience than we've seen from him in the past. And Emmanuel quickly has come to life, nearly automatic from three over his last two games. Knicks needed to continue to make up for the loss of Quentin Grimes to look to get back to their winning ways Friday against the Chicago Bulls.
Siakam stops the skids. Sean Woodley here from Locked On Raptors to break down the Toronto Raptors 113-106 win over the New York Knicks on Wednesday night at MSG. And the big takeaway from this one, Pascal Siakam may be the single best regular season game a Toronto Raptor has ever played. 52 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. He was 17 of 25 from the field in this game, 16 of 18 from the line. He was absurd. He brings to an end a really difficult losing streak for the Raptors. They had lost 6 straight games, some of them blowouts, some of them one-point games, even an overtime loss in there. They were spinning their wheels, and it looked like the season was going to get out of hand. Instead, Pascal Siakam comes in, walks into MSG, ends the Knicks' league best 8-game winning streak as well, and there's a little glimmer of hope here for the Raptors as they look to turn their season around. I'll have more on this game broken down on tomorrow's Locked On Raptors. Be sure to tune in.
Orlando staying true to themselves as they found a way to win on the road in Houston last night. Our Locked On Magic host is happy with what he's seeing from this young team.
The Orlando Magic have talked about staying the course and playing winning basketball, and that's what they did Wednesday night to defeat the Houston Rockets by 6, 116-110. My name is Philip Rossman, the host of Locked On Magic. And the Orlando Magic did not have their best stuff on Wednesday night. They looked very tired and listless defensively. The Rockets were hitting threes over and over again, but a few things happened that changed the tide. First, Jamal Mosley with a great decision to go to a zone defense, challenging the team defensively to use its length to get stops and defend the three-point line. That's what Orlando did. It sparked the Magic on a 17-2 run to tie the game and erase a 15-point deficit. And from there, the Magic's poise and composure and confidence played out. What we wanted to see from this game is the Magic confirm that 6-game win streak that was snapped on Monday. We wanted to see them continue to do the things that built that win and built winning habits. Well, it wasn't pretty in this one, but Orlando did just that, getting a huge win and heading home 3-1 on this 4-game homestand.
More of the same for Oklahoma City. SGA delivers. The defense smothers Damian Lillard in crunch time as OKC tops Portland for the second time in 3 days. Locked on Thunder is in to recap another good night for OKC.
The Oklahoma City Thunder beat the Portland Trailblazers for the second straight game in this baseball series. Josh Giddey returns from the flu, loses 10 pounds, but gains an incredible game. SGA was phenomenal, and Lou Dort smothered Dame at the end to win the game down the stretch. The Thunder are on a nice winning streak, but the Pelicans come to town on Friday. Can this continue? And where's this season heading on Locked On Thunder?
That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Game to Game NBA. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Make sure that you are subscribed to Locked On NBA and, of course, your favorite team's Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.